guys going? Get started. The tape on Sunday was real close to what we talked about post game. So not really anything to add there. Obviously, took good care of the ball, made some plays on offense. Running game's better, blocking was better. Defensively, our staff made some really good adjustments at halftime. Played well for the most part, tackled fairly well, and we were good on special teams. So it's a good win for our program. Good practice last night. Players felt good about themselves. Obviously, getting into another week, team that's gotten considerably better over the last couple weeks. After what I'm sure they would consider maybe a slow start, but made a few adjustments in their defensive structure and the way they're playing. Quarterbacks have a nice little running game with their package, and so we need a great week of practice like always. Continue to get better at what we think gives us the best chance to be successful over the next couple months, and go play hard on Saturday.
How's James Washington doing?
He's fine.
Usually, a lot of times, special teams can be somewhat of an overlooked aspect of the game, but talk about how crucial that series of blocks were for you guys.
After the game, I'd mentioned that when they tied it up, or were in a position to tie it up with a PAT, and then you get a block and you get 2 points and changes the momentum in the game and gets the crowd back into it, excited the team. And then to do it 2 more times was really special. Joe Bob Clements is our coordinator of our PAT block, PAT field goal, and they had a nice plan to attack number 63, and it worked out for us.
Mike, as you evaluated having Glenn upstairs, talking to a couple guys who said they sense maybe some calls getting in a little quicker and some things that they've noticed as being benefits. What was your conversation with him, and what did you guys detect just from that decision?
You mean after the game or prior?
No, after the game. How you evaluate how
Well,
it went?
yeah, the reason we wanted to do it was because of the style of play now in this league, and things happen so fast, and I think he felt more comfortable. I know that when I listened to the defensive staff on the headphones during the game, I thought it was somewhat more peaceful, just based on him being in a controlled environment. So I would say that it benefited our team.
Do you have to, I was talking, it seems like everywhere in the Big 12, points are being scored in bunches. And I think we've probably talked about this subject over the years repeatedly, but the adjusted thinking when it comes to defenses and how many points are you giving up per possessions and all of that. Is that just how it is? You have to wrap your head around that to sort of evaluate your defense in the Big 12?
And it's not necessarily just the Big 12 now, Jenny. If you look, the SEC, which has over the years prided itself on defense, and the scores in their league are very similar to the scores in our league to a certain extent, that we're in a trend again. We talked about this, kind of what you're referring to. We have good quarterback play again in this league. We have really good players, potential NFL players who are mature and they understand. And they're using offenses in this league are going to use all 52 yards wide of the field, and you're getting skilled players in space, quarterbacks that can keep the ball and run on a lot of these teams. You can't evaluate defenses as much on yards and points. I think the 2 areas that are important is if you're going to give up yards, which you are, then field goals are better than touchdowns. So what do you do inside the 10-yard line I think is really important. And then you can just throw out the points and yards per game. It needs to be based on total number of opportunities that the defense is given to stop them, because you're averaging right around 28 plays more per offense with these style of offenses than you were even 8 years ago. And so your numbers are going to be inflated just by total opportunities to get yards and to get points.
How would you, based on those areas, how would you say the defense and what Glenn's doing right now is? I know that nobody liked the way Baylor went, but overall, how do you feel like they're coming out on all those factors?
I thought that we were poor against Central Michigan on third downs. Then against Pitt, we gave up about 3 runs where we got out-gapped that I wasn't fired up about. And then at Baylor, we gave up the pump and go routes and gave up those big plays. Texas got us a half man short in the running game some based on what they do. It ultimately becomes a numbers game. You're going to play pass, you're going to play run. And their style allows you to kind of attack both. Iowa State did a tremendous job against Baylor's offense, in my opinion, based on that staff's first time in this league. So that's where the corrections need to be made. And I felt like that our overall plan and the way our players performed on the defensive side of the ball last week was better than it was in the 3 weeks before that.
Mike, we've seen throughout the season Mason Rudolph's ability to just hang in the pocket long enough and get the ball out before getting smashed. Mm-hmm. You've played the position. How difficult is it to stay composed when you got a 300-pound guy roaring down your neck?
Well, you're too young to know, but I didn't stay in there. I didn't have any interest in staying in there. I was trying to avoid contact at all times due to fear from those guys. So it takes a lot to set in there. I've always said this, that the quarterback has to be the toughest guy on the field because he's the one that gets hit and doesn't have a chance to hit back. And that's the way it is. That's why those guys make big money in the NFL.
And Mason showed us on some runs, especially that touchdown run, the ability to kind of sacrifice his body to do what he needs. You can't rep that in practice.
Right.
So how do you balance that when it comes to game day?
Well, he's always been that way. And the truth is we kind of hold him back a little bit, because I'm not excited about him exposing his body very many times in the game. So, the truth of it is if your offense has a backup that's experienced and understands and can fit a role similar to what your starter has, then you can roll the dice a little more. And right now we don't have a lot of experience at that position. So we would prefer to not expose him a lot, but he also needs to be able to carry the ball 3 or 4 times a game and keep a defense honest, but then protect himself.
That pass he had to McCleskey where he sort of tucked it in between 2 layers of defense, and McCleskey made a guy miss and scored. Is that a good executed play as you've seen on offense in terms of guys understanding the reads and then making plays in space, sort of everything you need to have?
We hit that play twice. Mike put that play in for Texas based on their defense, and we were able to hit it twice, both of them for big plays, and he had a good understanding, good feel for it, and he's trying to see where the safety's at based on our turbo system where we're going lining up fast and in a little bit of an unconventional look for them prior to what they've seen on tape coming into the game.
Can you talk a little bit about the composure you've seen from Justice Hill having a game like he did at Baylor and then going on to succeed against Texas?
He's really been fine from day one. Coach Arroyo was on him, handled him the right way, and obviously when I had made comments on us turning the ball over, Mason had turned it over and Justice, and so they understand who we're talking to, but that's important in order for us to be successful. And I had mentioned this before. He's a really quality, mature, classy young man. He had a good upbringing. He understands constructive criticism. He knows we care about him. He knows we're going to give him the ball. And I think that when you have a relationship with a player that he knows you care about him, then you can coach him any way you want. And for that reason, he was comfortable and ran well last Saturday.
There's different ways to hit home run plays, to hit junk plays. Your first 2 on Saturday, Hill's run and Washington's pass, certainly were good plays by the pitch and catch and the runner, but they were made by blockers. 4, I think, on Hill's and 2 big blocks downfield on Washington's catch.
Chris Lacey had a big block, and then Junior had a big block on Washington's play. We had a really good block on the perimeter on Justice's run, and then he ran through a guy or 2, and then did a really nice job on about the 6-yard line of avoiding that last defender to get into the end zone. That play was pretty impressive for a freshman against the quality of opponent that we played last Saturday.
As a coach, though, the blocks downfield, the guys making the extra effort to help somebody else, their team obviously spring a big play. that has to be a good feeling as a coach.
Well, that's what it's all about. Offensive football is 10 unselfish players and one guy that gets to touch the ball and make a play. And in our style, we have multiple receivers, and then obviously now in the running game, that when the game's over, there's always going to be good players that didn't get to touch the ball enough, and that's not something we can control. A lot of that's based on the defense. But I've mentioned this for a number of weeks now, what Juwan Seals is bringing to the table down the field. Not only is he making plays in the throwing game, but his leadership and downfield blocking. And then Chris Lacey in this last game was as impressive as any wideout that I've seen here in a long time, other than guy we had from down there at South Texas that played and we ran the ball all the time. I just went blank. I'll think of his name. He used to crack and block safeties for us all the time. I'll think of his name before this conference is who? Yeah, DeMarcus Connor. Yeah, he used to just wear guys out. Well, that's what Lacey did in the game. And last night when I was up at the office, I had my two little ones with me, and the 11-year-old, or he's 12 now, was watching the game, and he noticed Chris Lacey blocking downfield and what he was doing before he noticed anything else. And so that's what he brought to the party in this game, that attitude. And it was that's pretty special for a football team to have young men that are willing to play like that when they're not getting the football.
I don't know how you graded, but Keenan Brown was running around and blocking.
Keenan's got to play more. Keenan's got to get on the field more. And that's not been his demeanor when he arrived here. He's not been as aggressive as what he should be based on his body, but he's growing into it now. And I think that when you have leadership like Lacey and Seals and really all of them, then the other guys feel like they should jump on board, and that's what's happened with him. He made some nice plays also.
He's a little different for your Cowboy backs too. I mean, Beach was a tight end guard. Jarwin's been a jumbo player. This is a receiver that grew into a Cowboy back. Does that mean he could be even extra special from a receiving standpoint, you think, down the road?
He's had experience at the receiver spot. He has to learn to play in the world that our Cowboy backs do. He's got to be productive in face-to-face contact at times, and he's getting better. And as I mentioned, he needs to play more in the games. He's a guy that we need to use, take advantage of his body.
Do you think Joel Lanning might be the most underrated playmaker in the conference? He kind of arrived against you guys last year, didn't he?
Yeah, they have done very well. He's done very well, and has been very productive. No question that making plays.
Your linebacking core playing without Jordan most of the game on Saturday, but true freshman replacing him for the most part. What did you see out of Bundage out there?
He played hard. There was times that he wasn't in the spot that he was supposed to be in. The game was moving really fast, but he can run. He can get somewhere really quick, but he needs time and needs experience. There's always concern when you're putting players in there that don't have a lot of game experience. But in that situation, we didn't have a choice, and he went in and ran around and played well, and he should be better this week.
Is Jordan possible for Saturday?
I would say he's probable. They meet with they do all their medical exams and follow-ups this afternoon when they get out of school, and they'll let us know.
I know you probably never want to lose a starter like Jordan, but the fact that you got Calvin in there in a situation like that in a game that you ultimately won, does that almost work out a perfect scenario there?
Yeah, you just hate to have to put a young man in that hasn't played and then a lot falling on his shoulders. So.
Good feedback from the badge on the helmet, the new look you guys got.
The players really like the black. They're big on the black and gray. Not only our team, but the young men that we're recruiting, they're into those colors, and they like the chrome. So I thought they looked good. Uniform choice was excellent, and I know that we had a big group of really quality student athletes at our game, high school players, and they're big fans of it.
Have you gotten to know or talked to Matt Campbell at all since he's gotten a job in the conference?
I spent some time with him at the meetings, but other than that, not really. I mean, kind of followed from a distance, I guess, and have watched some of their tape. You know, Tim Beckman was up there before that, so I know a little bit about him, but not a lot.
Mike, Bill asked about Joel Lanning at quarterback and they do have the quarterback run game. They also have a pretty high quality running back in Michael Warren. How important is it to keep them curtailed with the run game, just so it doesn't open up? Because once they get to running the ball like Saturday, their passing game was better than it's been so far this
Well,
season.
it's everybody. You know how it complements. It's most of us. You know, we have to be able to stay balanced, and I'm sure that they feel that way. They're gonna base it on running the football, and then you have to get safeties and outside backers involved. I mean, it's the same with everybody in the league. And if you become one-dimensional, you're not as effective on offense. We've seen that here at our place. So you know, you have to stop the run, and it's going to force an extra hat to be in the box based on their quarterback's ability to take off and run with the ball like a running back would.
How have you seen Chris Lacey progress over the past 3 years?
Well, he's always been very competitive. Football is important to him. School's important to him. You know, he's an engineering major. He's in his 4th year of engineering school. And that's not an easy task when you have such a time demand that we have here. He gets over there late during the day because I joke with him that he's actually trying to get an education instead of just playing ball. But he's going to graduate here with an engineering degree. He's matured. He's tough. He's physical. He understands his role. And he's a huge part of our team.
How do you see those smarts play out on the field?
Well, just what you saw Saturday. He's able to make good, quick decisions in the mode he's in. Even if it's a blocking situation, he stays off their back, okay, and he stays away from cheap shots. You know, you can't block too far away from the ball. You have to be within proximity of the actual play going on. So he knows how to get in front of guys, and he's physical, and he takes a lot of pride in that. And you could take a poll of our team, and he would be in the top 5 if the players just voted on guys that they would want to be in a foxhole with. They would want to be with Lacey.
Coach Gundy, is this maybe the best overall special teams unit you've had here, or close between all different units?
We're doing good. You guys are aware we're using a lot of young players. We're trying to pace ourselves for conference play, and we have guys that are on special teams that are not really experienced, and they've done a nice job. And Steve Hauser, who's taken over our special teams, has been really good, works hard at it. It's important to him, and the players are buying in. Our kicking has been good. Philly's kickoffs this last game were the best they've been, and Zach Signer's been great. So up to this point, we've been very fortunate that we've had good results on special teams.
I know you're only, excuse me, a season and a half into Signer, but are you ready to put him at the Podge and Chart level?
You know,
He's pretty good.
He is, but those guys were Ray Guy winners and things like that. So he's getting better and better each day. I would anticipate him getting stronger in his development with Rob Glass and the strength and conditioning. But he's another guy that it's important to him. He's serious about punting. He's serious about getting an education, and so good things happen.
Mike, your first bye week comes up after the game this Saturday. Generally, you've had one earlier than this. You okay with it, or do you wish you'd had one earlier? I mean, or have you even thought about it?
I think this is a decent time. That would depend on what they do with our end of the game or end of the season game. If they're going to give us a bye week at the end of the year, then I would prefer to have one a little earlier if I was just sketching it up for ourselves. But then that gets into your recruiting calendar. You know, we've already talked about all that. So I think it's okay where it's at for this season.
I asked earlier about all the points scored in the Big 12, and you mentioned the fact that we're seeing it everywhere. You guys have a game against Texas combined for 90 points, OU, TCU, same sort of deal. But yet Clemson and Louisville combined for almost 80, and everybody says it's a great game. But these Big 12 games, people ask, where's the defense? Why in your estimation has the Big 12 gotten this reputation, and is it just there to stay?
We were the first league to really use the no huddle in 2000, whatever year that I got the job here. When Fedora came in with me, we started running no huddle, and it wasn't as much of a fast pace, but it was no huddle, so it was a little bit faster than the norm. Leach was at Tech, and he was no huddle, but he wasn't an up tempo. And then we started using more up tempo, and then before you knew it, you had 2 teams doing it, 3 teams, and then before you knew it, a lot of teams are doing it. So the league that people follow the most, which is the SEC, hasn't really turned this direction until 2 years ago, 3 years ago. A&M jumped in there and they were running it. Ole Miss is doing it now, and I don't even know who else is doing it. But now more conferences are seeing it, but it originated in this league, in my opinion, and so that's why we have the reputation for the fast offenses and supposedly defenses not being as good.
Do you think in any way it impacts recruiting of defensive guys that, they're gonna have to play a bunch of snaps, which I guess you could see as a positive chance to make plays, but there's that reputation. Do you sense any, it has been a couple years now, do you sense any perceivable impact on the recruiting out there?
It's interesting. Like 2 years ago, when Baylor played Michigan State in the Cotton Bowl, was that 2 years ago? Or was that last year? It was like 2 years ago. And Michigan State has had a reputation of being as good on defense as really anybody in the country, other than maybe Alabama or what LSU would be, just a perception, right? And in that game, I think Baylor scored 49 and maybe lost 51-49, but I think they had almost 700 yards. So when we talked about it as a staff, after that we were somewhat convinced that maybe it's not necessarily this league. Maybe it's if you play in this league week to week, you don't get a break. It's every week, and we've got it. We just played Baylor. Okay, we just played Texas, who's running the same scheme, and now we have Iowa State coming in, and they're spread with their quarterback running it, and they can play fast at times. So it's every week now, just kind of dominoes. In some of the other leagues, I don't think have that yet. There's a maybe 2 to 3 week break before they get into it. So the recruiting aspect of it is not as big a factor now as it maybe was 5 years ago, because other schools that at one time said we shouldn't do this because it's not fair to the health of the players, well, they've changed their mind and they're doing it now. So I think those thoughts got thrown out the window.
That last 5 yards or so before Rudolph scored, at least from up here, it became apparent that we were going to have a couple of defenders converge on him. For you thinking, I really want this touchdown, or I really hope my quarterback doesn't get hurt here.
Well, I saw him converging myself, and unfortunately what I saw was foreshadowing for what happened. And I was more concerned about him getting hit than I was the touchdown at that particular time. I figured we could score from the 2. But anyway, he wants to play like that. That's important to him, so I'm not going to take that away from him. He wants to, at times, keep the ball, and he wants to be reckless with his body. And that's great for the team, great for everything. As long as he gets up and jogs off, it's all good.
Do you relate to that reckless mentality at all? Do you see it yourself in him when he channels those reckless plays?
If you look at me, I'm at 183 pounds with clothes on, and Mason is 230 pounds. There's a big difference in he and I when it comes to that. So I like his competitiveness. I like his nature. I like what he brings to the table. But we've just not been real excited here about our quarterbacks taking a lot of hits. We would prefer that they use and get what they can and then slide and not abuse their body.
So what is your, with this being by far the heaviest load Justice Hill has carried at this level so far, how did he recover yesterday and today?
He ran really well last night. So knock on wood, hopefully he'll continue to push, move forward. I can't even remember how many times he carried the ball now. 23, 25 times, pretty good load. I don't know that we've had a guy carry it 25 times around here in, what, 2 or 3 years? Sure. So there's always concern about at some point a true freshman can hit a wall, but I think his health's good. I'm fairly certain he takes care of his body, which gives him the best chance for success as we push through the next couple months.
Do you know how close you are to getting Chris back, Carson?
Let's see. How long has he been out? 2 weeks? I would say that he would be back for the next game. I don't think that he'll be back for this game. I mean, I know that he's. Yes, yeah. I mean, I know that he's walking around now with a different type of protected device on his hand, and they said he was going to practice, but I don't know that he'll be able to play.
Like talking about Mason's scrambling, he's extending plays as much as he's scrambling. It seems like that's even more so this year. Is that mental recognition? Is that physical willingness to, sort of do some things? I don't know what that, okay.
It's both. It's experience, and he has a feel for the speed of the game, and he is aware of more going on out there. So I would say both those are contributing to that.
Anything else?
Good. All right, thanks.